Hey everyone, imagine sitting at a fancy restaurant with your family and getting shown to a folding chair by the trash can. You feel tiny, invisible, and the whole place laughs at you. Then the bill arrives, $3,200, and suddenly the game changes. Want to hear more? Please like and drop a comment, but don't subscribe if you're curious about how Jessica turns this around. Jessica's story spans 50 years of twists, turns, and lessons. She faced family hurt, carved her own path, and learned that kindness is the best revenge. Over 5 decades, she moved from being mocked to becoming someone no one could ignore. It was a rainy Friday evening in Silverwood, a quiet suburban town. Jessica, now in her late 20s, had been looking forward to dinner with her parents and older brother Michael. They were celebrating Dad's birthday at the Golden Elm, a posh new bistro in Maple Glen Estates. Jessica had saved up all month to buy her own dress, simple, sky blue and new. She felt proud as she walked through the glass door, umbrella dripping. The hostess greeted them with a polite smile. "Table for 4, she asked. Michael, always the oldest son type, nodded and gave his name. The hostess led them past tables where couples clinked glasses and friends laughed. Jessica noticed how the light caught her dress and wondered if this night could bring them closer. They stopped in front of a small, fold-out chair beside the wait station. "Sorry, this table's for family only," Michael smirked, pointing at Jessica and the wobbly seat by the trash can. Everyone in the restaurant turned to look. Jessica's heart sank. The hostess looked uncomfortable, but didn't say anything as Jessica sat down. The chair scraped, the metal cold against her skin. A hush fell. Jessica's mother went pale and looked at her husband. Dad whispered something, but Michael just laughed. Other diners chuckled, and the waiter waited awkwardly for orders. Jessica forced a smile and opened the menu, but her hands trembled. She felt smaller than the chair itself. The waiter returned. "Can I start you off with drinks?" he asked, glancing at Michael. Michael ordered 2 bottles of bubbly champagne for himself and Dad. Mom ordered water. Dad said red wine, and Michael added, "And we'll let Jess have tap water. No charge." Laughter all around. Jessica said nothing. She asked for sparkling water. The waiter nodded, eyes sympathetic. As they waited, Jessica's brother chatted about a job promotion he'd just gotten. Jessica had been passed over. Mom tried to include her, but Michael ignored her, focused on himself. She watched her family celebrate Michael's news, her own disappointment hidden behind a polite nod. The food arrived in waves. Plates of seared salmon, roasted vegetables, and creamy risotto. Jessica's dish was the cheapest pasta special. Michael scoffed at her plate and said, "Hope you like noodles, kid." Jessica kept quiet and ate slowly, tasting each bite more for survival than pleasure. After dinner, Dad tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but Michael interrupted him, boasting about his raise. Jessica's mother stared down at her napkin, tears forming. Jessica felt a hot anger inside, but she held back, counting each breath. Finally, Michael called for the bill. He reached for his wallet, but the waiter set down the check. Jessica looked. The total was $3,200. Michael's eyes widened. "What?" he said. Everyone at the table leaned forward. The waiter looked at Jessica, then at Michael. Jessica closed her eyes, remembered every time she was told she didn't belong. She opened them, looked at the waiter, and quietly said, "Not my table." A gasp passed through the restaurant. Chairs scraped. Michael's face turned red. The waiter blinked. Jessica sat tall in her folding chair by the trash can, her eyes calm. Silence stretched. Then the lights seemed to flicker, as if the room paused to watch what would happen next. And that's where it ends for now. The hush in the restaurant felt as thick as the storm clouds outside. All eyes were on Jessica, perched on that tiny folding chair by the trash can. Her brother, Michael's jaw dropped. His face turned red, then pale, then red again. He looked at the bill, then at Jessica, then at the waiter. Jessica's mother gasped. Her father leaned forward, mouth open. Even the other diners, mouths full of food, slowly stopped chewing and stared. Michael stammered, "Jess, you can't just—" Jessica held up a hand. Her voice was calm but firm. "This table isn't mine. I'm not paying for it." She smiled, not a cruel smile, but a proud one. The waiter, confused, looked from Michael to Jessica. He set down the bill again and cleared his throat. The restaurant manager appeared, tall and serious, and stood behind the waiter. Everyone waited for what would come next. Michael's face twisted with anger. He reached out to grab the check, but thought better of it as the manager's eyes locked onto him. Jessica sat up straighter in her folding chair, her heart pounding, but her face steady. The manager cleared his throat. "Sir, the check is for your table," he said, pointing at Michael and their parents. Michael's face crumpled in embarrassment. Jessica's mother stood up suddenly and ran to Jessica's side. "I am so sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, voice shaking. She put her arm around Jessica. The manager nodded at the waiter. The waiter took the check back to the register. Michael sat back down, defeated and silent, while Dad said something softly to him. The manager scanned the family's table with a pen, recalculating. Jessica's heart pounded. She looked around the room. Faces showed shock, curiosity, even respect. After a long moment, the manager returned with a new check. He placed it gently in front of Michael. It read $3,200. Michael's eyes filled with tears. He looked at the check, then at Jessica. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came. He closed it and looked down at his hands. Jessica's mother led her away from the table, over to a window with a view of the rain dripping down dark leaves. She wrapped her arms around Jessica and hugged her tight. "You did the right thing," she said softly. Jessica closed her eyes, feeling Mom's warmth. She felt small tears slide down her cheeks, but didn't wipe them away. She felt proud and sad and relieved all at once. Back at the table, Dad paid the bill without a word. He counted out dollars into an envelope and passed it silently to Michael. Michael took it with shaking hands. He glanced at the envelope, then at Dad, then at Jessica, standing by the window. Dad caught his eye and gave a tiny nod. Michael's face twisted in regret. The family left the restaurant in silence. The rain had stopped. Streetlights reflected in puddles. Jessica's mother held her hand. Jessica walked between her parents, but Michael lagged behind, head hanging. At the car, Dad opened the back door for Jessica. She climbed in, shivering. Mom slid in beside her. Michael got in the front passenger seat, avoiding eye contact. On the drive home, Jessica stared out the window. The rain-slick roads passed by in slow motion. She thought about how it felt to be laughed at, then how it felt to stand up for herself. Her chest felt tight, like a knot had loosened inside. Mom reached over and squeezed her hand. Jessica nodded, blinked back tears, and managed a small smile. When they got home in Silverwood Estates, an old neighborhood with tall oaks and neat lawns, Jessica's father parked a car. The house was quiet. Michael got out first and raced inside, slamming the door. Dad and Mom watched him go, then turned to Jessica. Mom knelt down and hugged her again. "You are strong," she whispered. Inside, the living room light burned bright. Jessica kicked off her shoes and walked to the couch. Dad sat down beside her. He put an arm around her shoulders. Jessica leaned into him. Mom joined them. The three sat in a gentle silence, listening to the distant sound of Michael's footsteps upstairs. "Jessica," her father said softly after a moment, "you did something brave tonight." Jessica looked up at him. His eyes were full of pride and sorrow. She gave him a small nod. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. Later, Jessica climbed the stairs and peeked into Michael's room. He was at his desk, head in his hands. She walked in quietly. Michael looked up, eyes red. Jessica sat on the edge of his bed. "I'm sorry," he said. Jessica felt her heart twist. She opened her mouth to answer, then thought better of it. Instead, she stood up. "Later," she said softly, and left the room. That night, Jessica lay in bed and thought about revenge. She didn't want to hurt Michael. She wanted him to learn. She thought of small kindnesses she could do that would sting more than any cruel trick. She pictured teaching him a lesson he would never forget. But she also thought of being kind to strangers, of helping people who were alone. She realized how much it hurt to be left out. She decided her revenge would teach kindness. The next morning, Jessica woke to sunshine and birds. The house was quiet. She got dressed and went downstairs. In the kitchen, her mother was making pancakes. The smell of syrup filled the air. Jessica sat at the table. Mom placed a plate of warm pancakes in front of her. Jessica smiled. "Thanks, Mom," she said. Then the doorbell rang. Jessica's mother wiped her hands and went to answer. She came back with a man in a smart suit. He held a folder and a friendly smile. "Hello, Mrs. Clark," he said. "I'm Mr. Benson from Maple Glen Bank. I have some important news for Jessica." Jessica sat up straight. Her mother looked puzzled. Mr. Benson opened his folder. He smiled at Jessica. "Congratulations," he said. Jessica's heart thumped. "On what?" she asked. Mr. Benson's smile grew. "You've been approved for a grant to start your own bakery business right here in Silverwood Estates." He handed her papers. "We love your idea for kindness cakes, and we'd like to give you $30,000 to help you start." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. Her mother gasped and hugged her. Jessica looked at the papers, then at Mr. Benson, then at her mother. This was the chance she had dreamed of. Her heart soared. Michael rushed downstairs, saw the scene, and froze. He looked at Jessica with wide eyes. Jessica closed her eyes and breathed, remembering last night. She opened them and smiled at Michael. "Guess I'm paying for my own table now," she said softly. Michael swallowed. He tried to speak, but couldn't. Jessica turned to Mr. Benson. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling. "I promise to use every dollar wisely." Mr. Benson nodded and shook her hand. Outside, the neighbors gathered as news spread. Jessica felt their smiles and kind words wash over her. She stood tall, proud and happy. But as she turned to look back at her house, she noticed something. On the front porch lay an envelope. It wasn't her grant papers. It was small, simple, and unmarked. She picked up the envelope, heart pounding. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single photo of her, sitting on that folding chair by the trash can, looking small and hurt. On the back, in neat handwriting, were the words, "You think you're better now? We'll see about that." Jessica's breath caught. She looked around. The neighbors were still smiling and talking. Michael watched her, concern in his eyes. Mom and Dad were settling Mr. Benson's car into the driveway. The world seemed normal and bright, but that envelope in her hand felt like a shadow creeping in. Jessica closed the photo and slipped it into her pocket. She smiled weakly at her family, then turned away. Her heart hammered. She knew this was not over. The real test of her kindness and strength was just beginning. And with that, the chapter ends on a new, sharp twist that promises the next storm is coming. Jessica's hand trembled as she held the photo and the message. The edges of the envelope were crinkled from being shoved under her door. She felt her heart pound like a drum. Outside, her family was still celebrating the bakery grant. The sun shone on Silverwood Estates, but in Jessica's mind the storm was raging. She slipped the photo into her pocket and took a slow breath. Inside her house, Mr. Benson from Maple Glen Bank was shaking hands with her parents. "We'll be in touch soon," he said kindly, then walked away to his car. Jessica watched him go, then closed the front door. Her mother turned to her. "Jess, are you all right?" Jessica forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mom." But inside she felt cold. She led her family into the kitchen, where pancakes smelled sweet on the stove. Dad poured coffee and Michael hovered by the fruit bowl. No one mentioned the envelope. They chatted about the bakery, about how wonderful it was that Jessica would help people feel happy with her cakes. For a moment, Jessica almost forgot the photo. She sat at the table, surrounded by her family's warmth and the smell of syrup. She looked at Michael. He offered her a plate of extra strawberries. He said, "I'm proud of you, Jess." His voice was soft, full of regret and hope. Jessica nodded and accepted the strawberries. They ate quietly, the house alive with morning light. Mom said, "Let's go look at that old storefront today." The shuttered shop on Oak Meadow Lane had the perfect windows and a faded sign. Jessica's heart fluttered with excitement. She grabbed her keys. "Let's do it," she said. They piled into the car. Michael sat next to Jessica in the back seat. She felt his knee brush hers. He whispered, "I'm sorry about last night." Jessica looked at him. She saw his eyes, honest and sad. She whispered back, "Thank you, Mike." They smiled at each other, as brother and sister again. At the storefront, a thin layer of dust covered the glass. The door creaked when Dad opened it. Inside, the floors were scratched and old paint peeled from the walls. But sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting warm squares of light on the dusty floor. Jessica imagined her ovens and cake stands there. She could almost taste the vanilla frosting waiting to be piped on cupcakes. Mom and Dad walked through, talking about electric outlets and plumbing. Michael stood near the window and watched Jessica. She traced a heart in the dust with her finger and smiled. For a moment, she forgot the envelope. The future looked bright again. They left a deposit and set up a meeting with the contractor. Jessica felt her chest fill with hope. She and Michael walked back to the car side by side. He put his arm around her shoulders. "We'll make this place amazing," he said. Jessica leaned into him. She felt his support like a warm blanket. Back home, neighbors waved as they drove past. Jessica felt lighter. She unloaded her bag and went upstairs to her room. She pulled out the photo from her pocket. The picture of her on that folding chair looked small and lost. The message, "You think you're better now? We'll see about that," felt like a knife. She folded the note carefully and tucked it into a drawer. Then she took out her journal and wrote, June 30th, 2025. Today was the best day and the scariest day. I got the bakery grant and found my shop. But someone wants to scare me. I will not let fear win. She closed the journal and lay on her bed. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about kindness and revenge. She knew that teaching kindness was her goal, but someone wanted to make her afraid. She made a promise. She would not back down. She whispered, "Kindness always wins." That afternoon, Jessica and Michael met the contractor, Mr. Lopez, a friendly man with a big laugh. He showed them blueprints and estimated costs. Jessica learned about ovens, sinks, and air vents. The work would take 8 weeks. 8 weeks felt like a long time, but also like a promise of new beginnings. Michael paid the deposit. He looked at Jessica and said, "I'll help you every weekend." Jessica felt tears in her eyes. "Thanks," she said softly. They shook hands on it, a silent pact of sibling love. On the ride home, Jessica felt hopeful. She chatted with her parents about paint colors, soft yellow, pale mint, creamy white. They talked about a little seating area, a window ledge for cupcakes and chalkboard menus. Jessica's mind buzzed with ideas. When they arrived home, the mailman was at the door. Mom waved him over. He handed her a large, white envelope. Mom looked puzzled. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, printed from a computer. Mom read aloud, "Your bakery permits have been denied. Zoning board cites, noise complaints, and lack of parking. Fees and appeal process will cost you $2,000. Jessica's heart froze. She took the letter. She read it twice. Zoning board, noise complaints, parking. She looked at her parents. Dad's mouth was open. Mom's face turned pale. Michael shook his head. "This can't be real," he said. Jessica felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She realized someone had used influence to block her bakery before it even began. It matched the photo threat. The stakes had just shot up from scary words to real roadblocks. She looked at the paper in her hand. The words blurred. She heard her own voice in her head. "Kindness always wins." She straightened and spoke out loud. "We're going to fight this." Her voice sounded strong, even to her. Her father put a hand on her shoulder. "We will," he said. Michael clenched his fists. "I'll talk to the board," he promised. Mom nodded. They gathered in the living room, determined to appeal the decision. As they planned, Jessica felt her anger and fear mix into determination. She would learn about zoning laws, gather signatures, talk to neighbors, even write letters. She would stand up, not just for herself, but for anyone made to feel small. That night, as Jessica lay in bed, she thought she could finally sleep. But just as she closed her eyes, the phone buzzed. A text message popped up from an unknown number. "If you keep fighting, you'll regret it. Last warning." Jessica's stomach turned. She sat up and stared at the screen. She felt a cold hand grip her heart. The threats had moved from paper to digital. Someone was watching her. Someone powerful enough to block permits and send warnings. She set her phone on her nightstand and stared at her hands. She took a deep breath. She thought of the folding chair by the trash can and the laughter she endured. She remembered her mother's hug, her father's pride, Michael's apology, the grant letter, the storefront dust, and the contractor's blueprints. And now this. Jessica closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "I will not be afraid. I will not give up." Then she heard a loud crash downstairs, a sound like glass shattering. Her heart leapt into her throat. She sat up, every nerve on fire. Someone had thrown a rock through the window of her living room. She raced to the door and peered into the dark hall. The shattered pieces of glass glinted in the moonlight. She could see the living room lamp smashed on the floor, shards scattered like lightning. Jessica's breath came in quick bursts. She backed away, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. And that was the moment the chapter ended, on a sudden, sharp crash that turned her fight into something more dangerous than she ever imagined. Jessica's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The crash of glass downstairs still rang in her ears. She leapt from her bed and ran toward the stairs. Moonlight shone through jagged shards where her living room window had been. A heavy stone lay on the floor, and the lamp she and her family loved was broken into pieces. "Mom! Dad! Michael!" Jessica called, her voice shaking. She saw her mother's tired face appear at the top of the stairs. Her father and Michael were right behind her, both blinking in surprise at the broken glass. Jessica's mother hurried down first, stepping carefully over the shards. She wrapped her arms around Jessica. "Oh, honey, are you all right?" she whispered. Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes. Her father flicked on the hall light and walked into the living room. He knelt and touched the cold stone. "This was thrown from outside," he said. Michael crouched next to him. "Who would do this?" he asked, voice trembling. Jessica closed her eyes. She remembered the anonymous warning, last warning, and the denied permits. Someone was trying to scare her off, but she refused to be scared. She straightened and took a deep breath. "We have to fix this," she said, "and we have to find out who did it." Her father nodded. "First, let's clear the glass so no one gets hurt." The family worked together by flashlight. Jessica grabbed a broom and swept up shards. Her father bagged the pieces, and her mother fetched a box of gloves. Michael held the trash bag open. The work was quiet, except for the soft shuffling of glass in the bag and the distant sound of a neighbor's car passing by. When the last piece was swept, they stood in a circle of dust and wood floors. The hole in the wall looked like a black mouth. The night wind blew cold air into the room. Jessica shivered. She put her arms around herself. Michael spoke first. "Let's board it up until morning." Dad went to the garage for a board and hammer. Mom hugged Jessica. "I'm so sorry," she said. Jessica shook her head. "It's not your fault." She looked at the broken window. "It's part of this fight." Her voice was small but steady. Her father nailed the board in place. Michael helped him hold it. Jessica stood beside them, offering nails and the hammer when they needed it. The board went up crooked but held tight. When they finished, they stepped back. The living room looked dark and sad, but it was safe for now. Jessica's mother made hot chocolate for them in the kitchen. The warm mugs helped Jessica's trembling hands calm down. They sat at the kitchen table, the boarded window behind them. The night felt heavy, but the warmth of family made it lighter. Her father said, "Tomorrow we call the police and file a report." Michael nodded. "And I will talk to the neighbors. Maybe someone saw the person who threw the stone." Jessica sipped her hot chocolate. It tasted sweet, but she was still angry and sad. Her mother reached across the table and took Jessica's hand. "We are a team," she said softly. "We will get through this." Jessica looked at her mother's kind eyes and felt strength return. She squeezed her mother's hand. "Yes, we will." After cleaning up the mugs, they climbed back into bed. Jessica lay awake, thinking about what had happened. She knew her kindness project, kindness cakes, was bigger than her fears. She thought about the neighbors she would help, the people who would smile at her cakes, and the children who would feel happy. Finally, exhaustion claimed her and she fell asleep. The next morning, the sun peeked through white clouds. Jessica dressed quickly and went downstairs. In the kitchen, her mother was making oatmeal. The smell of cinnamon filled the air. Jessica's father and Michael sat at the table, a laptop open with the police website. Jessica poured herself a bowl and sat down. Michael looked up. "Good news," he said. "The police will send an officer today to take our statement. They also said they will look at security cameras on our street." Jessica felt hope. "Thank you, Mike." He smiled. Her father closed the laptop. "Also, I called the contractor. We may need to delay work until we can secure the shop site." Jessica nodded. She took a bite of oatmeal. It tasted good, but she was worried about the bakery timeline. Still, she knew safety came first. After breakfast, the officer arrived. He was a tall man with a gentle voice. He took photos of the boarded window and collected the stone in an evidence bag. He asked questions. "Did you see anyone outside? Did you hear voices?" They all shook their heads. He wrote down notes and promised to call back with updates. When the officer left, Jessica felt a small weight lift in her chest. She and Michael got in Dad's car and drove to the site in the open morning. The contractor, Mr. Lopez, was there with 2 workers. The dusty storefront still waited for paint and ovens. The boarded window at home echoed the boarded front door here. Mr. Lopez greeted them. "I heard about what happened at your house. I'm sorry." Jessica felt tears in her eyes again. "Thank you," she said. Mr. Lopez showed them plans for security cameras and stronger locks. He said, "We can add a security system for the same cost as a new window." Michael nodded. "Let's do it." Jessica agreed. They walked through the empty shop. Light streamed in from tall windows. The contractor marked places for cameras. Jessica imagined watching the entrance, making sure no one unwanted got close. She felt safer thinking about it. When they finished, they drove back home. The day was bright and full of birdsong. Jessica felt hopeful again. The stone crash had been a scary extreme event, but now she was learning how to protect herself and her dream. At home, she found her mother on the porch, talking to Mr. and Mrs. Daniels, their neighbors 2 houses down. Mrs. Daniels held a clipboard. Jessica approached. "Good morning," she said. Mrs. Daniels smiled. "Morning, Jessica. We heard about the rock. We want to help you with your appeal." She showed Jessica a petition with 20 signatures of neighbors supporting the bakery. Mr. Daniels added, "We know the noise won't be bad. We want this shop in our community." Jessica felt tears fill her eyes. "Thank you so much," she said. She took the clipboard and read the names. Olivia Winters, David Hart, Madison Lee, Joshua Nguyen, and others. She thanked each neighbor. They promised to speak at the zoning meeting next week. The less extreme event, the neighbors rallying, filled Jessica with gratitude. She felt kindness spread through her chest. She thanked everyone and walked back inside. In the afternoon, Jessica sat at her desk and wrote letters. She wrote to the zoning board, to her local council member, and to friends she knew in nearby towns. She explained why the bakery would help Silverwood Estates, creating jobs and smiles. She included drawings of cupcakes and hearts. She wrote in simple, clear words so everyone would understand. Her brother, Michael, joined her. "Let me help," he said. He typed on his laptop as Jessica read over each sentence. Together, they finished 10 letters. That evening, the family gathered for dinner. It was spaghetti, Jessica's favorite. They all sat around the table, talking and laughing. For one shining moment, the broken window and the rock felt far away. Jessica felt content. After dinner, Jessica checked her phone. A message from the police. "We reviewed camera footage. The person who threw the rock wore a dark hoodie. No clear face. We will keep looking." Jessica sighed. Not a clear face. She felt frustrated, but not defeated. She put the phone down and smiled at Michael. He was clearing plates. "Thanks for being here," she said. Michael shrugged. "Always," he replied and gave her a quick hug. They finished cleaning, then sat with hot tea in the living room. The board covered the window, but thick curtains helped keep the cold out. Jessica leaned back on the couch. She thought about kindness, about how many people had offered help. She thought about how anger could fade when people stood together. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. She looked at the screen. It was an email notification. The subject line read, "Permit appeal denied." Jessica's heart sank. She opened the email. It said the zoning board had reviewed the petition and the letters, but upheld their decision. They wrote, "The location still does not meet parking requirements. You may reapply in 6 months." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She felt a heavy weight in her chest. 6 months. That felt like forever. She looked at her family. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. Her father closed his eyes. Michael's face was tight with frustration. Jessica took a deep breath. She wiped her eyes. "We will not give up," she said, voice trembling but firm. She thought of her jars of sprinkles, her cake pans, and the people waiting for kindness cakes. She thought of every child who would light up at a new cupcake, every neighbor who would smile. She looked at her brother. "We will find another way." Michael nodded. "We will." Her father reached over and squeezed her hand. "We're with you," he said. Jessica felt courage bubble inside her. She stood up. "Let's meet tomorrow," she said, "and plan our next move." They agreed and finished their tea. Later that night, Jessica lay in bed, the room quiet. She heard the donk of the boarded window settling in the dark. She thought about the zoning board's words, "No reapplication for 6 months." She thought about the rock through her window. She thought about the unknown person who wanted to stop her. Then, from outside, she heard another sound, a low, rumbling noise like an engine revving. She sat up and listened. It grew louder, and suddenly headlights flashed against her bedroom ceiling. A car pulled into her driveway and stopped. Its engine idled. The lights stayed on. Jessica's breath caught. She slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the window crack. She peered through the curtains. A dark SUV was parked on the driveway, engine roaring softly. She could not make out the driver through tinted windows. Her heart thundered. She backed away from the window, feeling fear wash over her. She could hear the SUV door open with a creak. Heavy footsteps hit the driveway. And in that moment, the chapter ends on the ominous sound of someone stepping toward her house, leaving Jessica alone in the dark with her fears and determination, ready for whatever comes next.